Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening to talk about the 14th Amendment, as I like to call it, the Pope's Holy Roman 14th Amendment. But we're not going to really get into too much about the church tonight, even though that is the architect of the entire system. But watch previous episodes. I'll go over it in later episodes. Again, I'm sure it's hard to avoid that subject, but I took my last stream off of YouTube. I just felt like things were bugging with it. It's still on Rumble if you guys want to catch the last one, but I just felt like it didn't flow quite so smoothly. So I think it's because I pick there when it comes to this topic, there's so much involved, like so many moving parts and so much to actually understand, especially historically, that I kind of just spend a little bit of time on a great many subjects that all deserve a lot of time. So from here on out, I'm probably going to start just focusing on one section of it at a time. And I've decided that the most important section of it would probably have to be the 14th Amendment contractual nexus. I mean, without a doubt. The only way that Congress even gets jurisdiction over us is through the 14th Amendment. And that's what changed you from one of the people, a sovereign people, to a person, corporate person, because corporations gained personhood. They had premeditated that. That's why they used the word persons in the 14th Amendment and people in the preamble to the Constitution. Two completely separate classes, subjects of society, basically. Well, one is indeed a subject and the other is sovereign. And that's kind of what we're going to start going over tonight. Now, I would normally wait till people pour in here, but I do not think I'm going to get that many people initially because Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind has decided to do a stream. So I know we share a lot of the same subscribers, and they're probably over there, which is cool. He's got a debate coming up, which should be pretty interesting. But so I'm just pretty much going to jump right into it. Let's see here. I'm going to share this. So I know I go over this ad nauseum, and it's just so important to understand. You really can't go over it enough. We are a Confederate Union. Okay. And just in case you're tuning in for the first time, I'm just going to show this. If you have seen this, probably many times, if you've been watching my show, just bear with me because we always have new people dropping in and they always need to be caught up on exactly what's going on. It's another thing that takes a lot of time. So this is Michigan, Revised Statutes of Michigan, 1846. Anybody who doesn't believe me can go look it up themselves. And this is shortly after. Now, I live in Michigan. For those of you that do not know, that's how I ended up coming across this. I was looking at old Michigan enactments because they're not laws. They're never laws when they're made by a corporation anyway. Only God makes law. And I'm sorry if you're not religious. You can call it the creator or the universe or whatever it is that you view the supreme intelligence to be. If indeed you are smart enough to recognize a supreme intelligence. Forgive me if that offends you, but I mean, come on, we're not going to get into that though. So this is shortly after Michigan was accepted into the Union. This is in the appendix of the book, and it's basically Congress's acceptance of the acceptance, basically. We're going to skip a lot of it, and we're just going to start right here where it says, the state will be greatly advanced by an immediate admission into the Union as one of its sovereignties, and the people of the said state are solicitous to give to her sister states and to the world unequivocal proof of her desire to promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy. Every state is still to this day a Confederate state. The Civil War was one of the most successful psychological operations to remove people from the truth of their law and history, and also one of the most useful tools for actually enslaving the country. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But every state is a Confederate state. Now, Confederacy is associated with slavery and racism and that's not what that means. If we pop over to Doan's administrators, Penn Oliver Stone's Administrator, 1795. This is on casemine.com. It says, wherever an alliance, I can't highlight it because I don't pay, but it's right before what is highlighted. I was searching the term so I could find it more quickly. But wherever an alliance is not corporate, but confederate, the sovereignty resides in each state. Now, this is so important. This is so important because the people, we the people, create the states, and then we delegate powers to the states. We, for the first time in history, at least history we have access to, because I'll be the first to tell you that I know a lot of our history is BS. But for the first time in history that we have access to, the common person was sovereign. This in any other nation, this was never the case. Every person except for the king or queen, whatever monarch there was, or emperor, or whatever kind of dictatorial ruler there was, everyone was a subject except for that one person. And even that one person subject to the Pope, but we're not getting into that this episode. So this was the first time in history that we have access to that the common person was able to hold the same title as a king or a queen, and we all shared in the sovereignty collectively. The body politic is the people, and that's the most powerful body politic to this day. That's why I do these shows. I do these shows because the more of us we can wake up, the greater chance we have of turning this thing around. And all it takes is for us to stop consenting to it, right? So whenever an alliance is not corporate but confederate, the sovereignty resides in each state. And whatever powers are not delegated to the state are reserved to the people. So the creator can never be subject to the created. Okay, you create a character, or you create a corporation. It's a perfect example because that's what happens. If you create a corporation, can you become a slave to that corporation? Right? Not to get, like I said, if you're not religious, but this is another analogy. God created us. Can God be subject to us? No. In the same way, we cannot be subject to anything that we create. And all law is esoteric, and all law does go back to spirituality and ultimately the Bible, especially Anglo-Saxon, English law, American law, even to a degree Norman law, or not Norman, German, whatever you want to call it, Nordic. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. But yeah, the creator cannot never be subject to the created. Okay, so the people created the state. The states got together and created the federal government. So the Articles of Confederation created the states. That's why we're a Confederate Union. Okay, well, it turned the colonies into states. Okay, sovereign nations of sovereign people. And all power, the first line in any state constitution should be all political power is inherent in the people. So the people got together and created the states. The Articles of Confederation are what brought a union of those states together in the first place. And each state had representation in a confederation. Okay. And then they wanted a stronger federal government for nefarious purposes, centralize the borrowing power, centralize the ultimate authority, essentially. And there was still a lot of safeguards that were put in place thanks to Thomas Jefferson. Why can't I think of his name? Thomas Paine, and I want to say Patrick Henry. That's it. Patrick Henry, Thomas Paine, and Thomas Jefferson rallied the people to have a Bill of Rights amended to the Constitution because he knew it was a document of enslavement that gave the judicial branch of government way too much autonomy and authority. And that's actually how we ended up enslaved. So we're a Confederate nation. Okay. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The United States has always been a foreign corporation. Okay. So I've shown you guys this many times. This is gov.uk. It's the company's house services. Now, companies like the Virginia Company or the Delaware Company or the East India Trading Company, this is listed on Companies House because companies differ from corporations in the sense that they have the ability to wage war, to operate as governments. So this is why the United States of America was registered in England, Okay. And it was under the king. The Treaty of Paris proves that. We still pay royalties. We have always paid royalties to the king for the settlement of this land and all that good stuff. So this basically just provided an international representation for us. But this, for that specific reason, was given very limited power. That's why it was restrained so heavily by the founders and by people pretty much up until about the 1840s, 1850s. And they started really undermining state sovereignty until you culminated in the Civil War. I digress. There was significant restrictions, chains put on this company. But just for those of you who haven't seen it before, this is under the people. Says one active beneficial owner. Who knows? Maybe one of the black nobility, right? It won't tell you. Go ahead and check it out yourself. It just says we've verified that there's, all beneficial owners have been identified and all required information can be provided. We're not going to provide it though, right? And this is the full name, Government of the United States of America, correspondence address. And this is the most interesting part for anybody who thinks this is a recent development. It was notified on the 3rd of July, 1776. Everybody should know why that is significant. It is the day before Independence Day. So, yes, you're right, Jerry. It is easy to sidewind, for sure. Yes, and as Jerry, son of Micah, said, he who creates controls. So this company was ultimately created by the representatives of the state. So this beast, this Leviathan, was subject to the states individually. Each state is a nation, and we've been brainwashed for so long that it's almost impossible for the average person to think of their state as a nation. They think of it as just one part of a much larger nation, but we were a confederation of nation states. We were a lot like what the European Union is, and what the European Union is trying to be is what we are. That's part of their international globalist movement where they can bring everybody under a one world government. And this is the way that they think that they can do it. Well, originally it was sold to the people for the mutual economic prosperity and mutual defense of each of the nation states. They would come together in an alliance and be recognized internationally as the United States, even though each state is sovereign from one another, and most especially sovereign and foreign to the United States. So now when you look at it like that, as foreign as Italy is from France, okay, that's how foreign Michigan is from the United States, or from Virginia, or from Minnesota. These are all foreign nations to one another. Now, there were various agreements of what each state would recognize, come together and work together on, right? Like criminals, for instance, fugitives from justice, and various things like that, recognize, and then the mutual economic prosperity. But each state is its own nation. So important to understand. So very important. So you guys can go to company, you go to companyhouse.gov.uk, find and update company information, search for a company. All you have to do is put in the United States and you'll find the United States of America. It's right here. So moving on, right in our own United States Code, which is actually just so what happened was the Uniform Commercial Code was created after the bankruptcy in 1933. And then they codified that Uniform Commercial Code as international law of commerce. And what the United States did, now that they made us a mortgaged commodity, which we may get to later, we have ad nauseum, so my regular viewers should understand what I'm saying. They codified UCC and basically just personalized it for the United States. So it's called the United States Code. Okay. And it's basically the collection of enactments that conform to Uniform Commercial Code. And then each state also adopted its own Uniform Commercial Code. Michigan's was in like 64, 65. I think I got it right over here. 62 right here. And we may get into this a little bit later, depending on how late it gets. But back to this. So it says right in the United States Code, the United States is a federal corporation. The United States is not a nation. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a story real quick. When I first started getting on the internet and trying to tell people about this stuff, I wasn't nearly as knowledgeable as I am now. I mean, I knew a lot. I knew a lot more than the average person, especially. Had a lot of experience with things, but I couldn't quite figure out how they were dragging us into maritime law. Now I know. But this lawyer, I decided to have a debate with him. So I dedicate this episode to Artie's corporate fiction because he had me licking my wounds because I didn't have any of this evidence that I have here now prepared for you. And I was pissed. I was very upset because I knew what I was saying was true. I just did not know how to conclusively prove it. Well, what these lawyers try to do, whether it be part of your oath that you have to take to the bar, whether you're personally incentivized or whether the knowledge is just so compartmentalized. With Artie, I feel like he knows, but that's my personal. I mean, his channel name is Artie's Corporate Fiction, right? He actually thought I made my name as like an insult to him, which I did not. Didn't even know about him when I made my channel name, but it happened to be convenient, because he's Artie's Corporate Fiction. So I feel like he does. But anyways, the knowledge is also compartmentalized. I don't think every lawyer's in on it, but I do think that every judge is in on it. They have to be, because the court is a bank in itself, and they have to know what they're doing under the trust indenture and creating new trust indentures and generating bonds and commercial paper. They have to know what they're doing. So I do think every prosecutor is in on it. Going back to how the law is biblical, I was reading today, and this is a fact. I mean, Satan in the original Hebrew literally means prosecutor, or is the equivalent of prosecutor. And defense attorney, the Greek word for guardian angel is literally defense attorney. So I'll have to bring that up another time. I just came across that the other day, but that is what the prosecutor is literally doing. And in the Jewish concept of Satan, who works for God and tempting people and then accusing them in front of God, like, see, that's what the prosecutor is. And this whole system is fairly evil. I mean, it's definitely not. When men try to create laws, they're placing themselves in the position of God, and especially when you're a judge and think that you have the right to judge another person as if you are beyond reproach. It's the purest form of narcissism to be a judge, I would imagine. But anyway, so fortunately, me licking my wounds after that little debate with Artie actually led me down the path where I was just so determined to dig and dig and dig. So I started reading through code, and I started reading through everything I could get my hands on as it related to. I knew the time periods to look. I knew the time period was 33, and I knew that, right? Maybe I'll do an episode teaching you guys how to research. You can take what you get from WordPresses and unofficial sources, and you can go verify it yourself. Generally, most good unofficial sources will leave an official source where you can go verify. And then don't use the unofficial source as your proof. You go to the official source, make sure that it's true, and then bring it. And I started just reading nonstop law. Well, here's the thing that these lawyers always try to say is that, of course, you're a United States citizen. Saying you're not a United States citizen is just a conspiracy theory. You watch too much YouTube, right? I actually had a lawyer tell me that once, until I had a stack of papers, probably about a foot thick, of stuff that was solid research from authoritative sources, not any kind of, and I just started going through each document. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, look, this is where our property rights were mortgaged. He actually tried to say, oh, that's old law. I said, there's no such thing as old law. There's only the Constitution, man. That's it. You can't say there is old law. Okay. And by the time I was done explaining to him exactly what I knew and what had been done, he said, okay, you know your shit. That's what he told me. So, anyways, they try to say that, oh, that's conspiracy theory, all that stuff. Well, tonight I'm showing you it's not. The United States is a federal corporation, not a nation. So what do you think it means to be a United States citizen? Right? What do you think that means? You are an enfranchisement of a corporation. Now, being a citizen of one of the United States is different, but that's not what they're saying when they say United States citizen, right? A United States citizen, I like how they do their backwards double speak stuff here, right? So it's got the definition of a United States business. It doesn't say definition of a United States citizen. It's going to tell you the definition of a United States business. It's basically interchangeable. If one means the other, then the other means the one. It's right. United States business. The term United States business means a United States citizen. What? Wait a minute. What? Yeah, that's how corporations got their personhood, was through the 14th Amendment. And their goal, yes, they wanted the corporations to have personhood because prior to the 14th Amendment, we're going to look at this in a little bit, the corporations being created through the power of the state. Remember, the created cannot control the creator. We're subject to the arbitrary whim of the state, and the state could tax and do all this stuff to the corporation, right? Well, once they got that personhood established, and basically like, oh, we have rights as a United States citizen, then the states could no longer take advantage of them, and the corporations were able to actually enslave the states. We'll get into that. But the main reason they wanted to get that personhood was to make you and me and everybody else, well, you and I, proper grammar, English, you and I, United States citizens, and everybody United States citizens, so they could mortgage us as chattel property. Okay. United States means United States, or United States business means United States citizen. And of course it's a business because the United States is a federal corporation, right? None of these things say a nation, do they? And I can tell you it's always been that way. It's not a new development. All right. So now check this out. This is under Uniform Commercial Code. Concrete absolute proof. Well, I mean, I have tons of concrete absolute proof, but this is one of my personal favorites because everybody thinks, especially these attorneys that try to make you think you're crazy for knowing this, even though they probably know it. They say, well, the United States is referring to all the states. When you're a United States citizen, it just means you're a citizen of one of the states. Really? Well, everything has a different meaning in law. Okay. Location of debtor, because remember, the United States is bankrupt. House Joint Resolution 192, the Emergency Banking Act, Emergency Banking Relief Act of 1933. They mortgaged you. They mortgaged your property rights. They mortgaged the property rights of your children and your children's children and your children's children's children, right? Well, check this out. If we go down to H, location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. Well, wait a minute, what? I thought when I'm a United States citizen, that just meant I'm a citizen of one of the states. No, the United States is located in the District of Columbia. Okay. And 9 times out of 10, I'd say 9.9 times out of 10, when they say United States in anything after 1870, right? Well, actually, no, 1866. When they say United States, they're not referring to the collection of Confederate states. They're not referring to the union of sovereign states. They are referring to this corporation. And it was a very tricky wordplay how originally they had the two interchangeable. Because remember, the United States has, in fact, always been a corporation. What a clever thing to do to name yourself the same thing as the geographical location of your union. Tell me they didn't have this in mind the whole time. But when you say you're a United States citizen, right, you are literally saying, I am a citizen of the District of Columbia. Okay? You're saying I am a foreigner in my own state, and I am subject to the jurisdiction of the District of Columbia, basically subject to the jurisdiction of Congress. When we jump over here to before the bankruptcy, And I know I just looked it up. Where are you at? Not there. I think I brought it back here. Yeah, Long versus Rasmussen. So Long was a state citizen. Well, first, before we even get here, let's go here real quick. Location of debtor. We are going to go to McDonald v. State. Okay, now this is Indiana Supreme Court. This case is very difficult to find, but you can find it on courtlistener.com, which is one of the very few free legal research resources that are available, because they like to keep everything. They like to gatekeep everything with finances, making everything ridiculously expensive. I mean, I went to look for this book of Michigan motions and motion procedure. The book is over $1,000 for a book, over $1,000. And you definitely can't find, I'm very good at research. You can't find any free copies of any of this stuff online at all. None of these legal books that are current and up to date. You can find the old ones because you can't use them anymore. But you can, yeah. Anyway, they gatekeep with finances, and then they obviously gatekeep with the Bar Association. But McDonald v. State. So this guy was found guilty of murder, and he appealed the conviction because Section 1793 of the Revised Statutes of 1881 said the following and no other shall be good causes for challenge to any person called as a juror in any criminal trial. So this guy was called to a juror, or to be a juror at this guy's murder trial, and he was a foreigner who had moved to the state of Indiana and had filed his naturalization papers with the state of Indiana, but not with the United States Corporation. So he was a state citizen and not a federal citizen. So they obviously denied this guy's appeal. And the reason they denied it is right here. It says the evidence of bushing on his voir dire, whatever Latin that is, showed that although he was not a citizen of the United States, he was a citizen and voter of the state. Under Section 2, Article 2 of our state constitution, one may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. And in fact, you would rather that, because then you're not under the arbitrary legislation of Congress, their jurisdiction. So that's what I was going to with Long v. Rasmussen. Long v. Rasmussen says that, well, first of all, it specifies that it's an equity, because this is actually an Article 3 court who has jurisdiction over all cases in law and equity. The Constitution under Article 3, Section 2 actually makes that distinction. Okay. The reason they make that distinction, because it's not, equity is the enforcement of contracts. Law is common law in our country and requires a victim. Okay. In this case, she was technically a victim, but it was a governmental agency, the IRS, and they claimed that they were lawfully enforcing revenue code on a state citizen that was not federal. That was not a United States enfranchisement, not a United States business. See, the United States business, and in fact, that's the only income tax law that's ever actually been passed, is the corporate income tax law, which I believe was 1909. I could be wrong, but somewhere in there. And that's how they're able to charge you income tax, because they treat you as a corporation. And so you have a corporate income tax. Even though the 16th Amendment says it did not grant Congress any additional taxing powers, they were never able to reach into our paycheck and take money before. But they can do that to the federal corporate enfranchisement because, well, one, it's a creation of theirs. And remember, the creation is always subject to the creator. And secondly, because it's a corporation, not a living person, right? So the reason I bring this case up is took her property, but she wasn't a United States citizen. She wasn't subject to the revenue code. And that actually says that right here. The revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax and a tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. Now, see, you already had these bar pirates deeply entrenched in the courts, right? So they won't say citizen or United States citizens and state citizens. What they say is taxpayers and to non-taxpayers. it doesn't take much to figure out what they're saying, right? One is subject to the national debt under the 14th Amendment, which I don't even think I brought that up yet, did I? As right. Love this right here, because the 14th Amendment is sold as an equal protection tool. It was sold to the public, even though it wasn't ratified by the states at all, not even close to the quorum required to ratify this amendment. And they did it anyway by barring the states that didn't ratify it from the ratification process, even though those states were there to ratify the 13th Amendment, okay, which gave birth to the modern day prison system. They say that it abolished slavery, but it really just standardized it between these two. Anyway, so they say this amendment, they sold it to the public and said that it was for the protection of the rights of these newly freed slaves, so they could have rights, because our Constitution didn't grant rights to slaves, right? And think about that in that light of this 14th Amendment is to grant rights to slaves. So living free people, because there's only two types of slavery sanctioned by the Bible and sanctioned by actual, well, in the old days, now you have these international treaties and stuff, but there was only two types of slavery that were actually acceptable. One was slavery through debt, indentured servitude, which is what they have us under now. The other was slavery as a result of war, where you would have otherwise died. And you're captives, and they kept, so you read in the Bible, they're slaves. People wonder why that is. That's what that's all about. And so what the South, and remember, only like 1% of the South actually owned the majority of slaves, or 1 to 3. It wasn't your average white Southerner. And in fact, the vast majority of Irishmen were indentured servants, treated worse than them, but we're not going to get into that. What they were doing was man stealing, where they were going and capturing people not under a state of war and not through debt. And then that's man stealing, and that's unlawful. One of the reasons that this country fell, I believe, was because it was okay with that process taking place. But anyway, equal protection of these newly freed slaves. Well, no, this is to grant slaves rights, which is what it does today. It grants slaves rights. Everybody's debt slaves. Well, this is the interesting thing about this. If this is equal protection of everybody's rights by the government, right? The government's going to protect your rights for you, because you don't have the right to protect your rights yourself, right? No. Oh, well, first, here's that all persons, just so you see, you're no longer one of the people, you're a person. But Section 4, and tell me what this has to do with equal protection. Section 4 says the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection and rebellion, shall not be questioned. So we'll grant you rights, slave, and we'll protect your rights, slave, but you don't have the right to question the debt that we're accruing and using you as surety for. That's the point of this amendment. That was the main point, because the plan the entire time was enslavement through debt. And I don't think it was just us. I think we were just the model. And I think that these people that orchestrated this, these bar members, these bankers, they had the world in their field of view the entire time, because this is what they've done to the whole world. I mean, throughout the 60s, if you didn't have a central bank, if you weren't wealthy enough of a nation for the central bank to have a direct interest in setting up shop in your country, what they would do is they'd send what they called an economic hitman to your country to visit with your leader. This is a real thing. Look it up, Diary or Confessions of an Economic Hitman. One of them wrote a book about it and said, yeah, I was an EHM, economic hitman. Go down there to the country and say, hey, you guys need infrastructure, even traffic lights and street lights and garbage services and whatever else, they might paved roads, whatever. You guys need all this stuff, right? And, the leader, if he knew what was good for him, would say, yeah. Say, okay, we're going to arrange a loan for you from the World Bank. And they'd make sure that this loan could never be repaid. The interest on it alone could never be paid. And then down the road, once the debt was called in and the country couldn't pay it back, then they work out a deal for the resources, whatever resource, which is why they were targeted in the first place, whether it be something as simple as bananas or whether it be oil or whatever the case may be, right? And they went through the 60s and 70s and 80s. They went around doing this to all these third world countries. That's how the World Bank got a hold of all those countries, right? Without setting up shop directly in them like they did here with the Federal Reserve. I don't know if many of you know that, but that's a great book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Excellent. I think it's like Dave Perkins. If you just look it up, you'll there's only one of those books. But yeah, now get this: if the leader said no, I don't want to, take out this loan and burden my country with debt, then we would either send the CIA in, or we would outright send the military in and stage a coup or overthrow them, tell our people, tell the American people that it would, they're terrorists or they're plotting on us or they treat their people off or whatever the case may be, and then install a new dictator that will. But anyways, equal protection law. You have the right, we're going to protect all your rights, but you don't have the right to question this debt. That's what the 14th Amendment's all about, right? So back to Long versus Rasmussen real quick. The revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers, meaning United States citizens or businesses, and not to non-taxpayers. The latter, this is important, the latter are without their scope because Congress has never, ever, ever had jurisdiction over the citizens of the state, the inhabitants of the state. Congress has never, ever had jurisdiction over the citizens of the state, ever. That's why your governor will never, ever call you a citizen. It will never say Michigan citizens, Virginia citizens, whatever the case may be. You are residents, because resident is short for resident alien, right? Resident is a foreigner. Now, they've long since omitted that portion of the definition out. But if you go back far enough in the legal dictionaries, you'll see that's where that word comes from. And that's why you are a resident. You are not a citizen. They use this word on purpose. No procedure is prescribed for non-taxpayers, and no attempt is made to annul any of their rights and remedies in the due course of law. With them, Congress does not assume to deal, and they are neither of the subject nor of the object of the revenue laws, because Congress doesn't have jurisdiction over it. That's why they had to pass the 14th Amendment, or ratify the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. And that's why they had to successively, because this was 1922, and this chick, Edna Long, knew she wasn't a federal citizen. She's like, the hell with that. 1922, right here. So it took many generations to get people to forget. And Rockefeller was a big part of that by taking over the education system. Okay, he started the General Education Board in 1903, and then Nelson Rockefeller finished the job in, I think, the 50s when they created the National Board of Education. It was like the 50s or 60s, and placed himself at the head of it, right? Standardized schooling, make sure everybody gets taught the same thing, and then by proxy, control what it is that they are taught, which I guarantee you is not that you're a state citizen. Not that you do not have to be a federal. And does anybody find it curious that they don't teach law in school? I bring that up to people all the time. Oh, you think public school's indoctrination? Do they teach you law? No. Okay. Then yes, I do think it's indoctrination, because you can't learn history without learning the law. You can't know the law without learning finances and economics, because the law is determined by the system of economics. And the system of economics is therefore determined by the history. So history, law, and economics, finances are intimately intertwined for every country. Now, sometimes, I know, Jerry, you are, I think you're in Ireland, right? So it's tough because a lot of this stuff I'm talking about doesn't really apply to you, but it is. So basically what happened to the United Kingdom area just happened a lot further from what I can gather. And I am by no means not a professional in that area of history like I am this area. But from what I can gather is prior to the Magna Carta, there was only essentially what amounted to royal decrees and whims, or a form of international Phoenician maritime law. So the Magna Carta gave birth to common law, and then now they only apply that to the nobles and barons, and the common people don't have any access to it. But I'm not gonna get into that tonight. So yeah, they didn't have any jurisdiction over her. So the court obviously ruled in her favor. Said he was acting beyond his scope of authority, right? Upon plaintiff's property is committing without authority, contrary to his duty and in violation of the due process of the Constitution and the revenue laws of the United States. Positive acts of trespass. Now, I learned something not too long ago. Positive acts, if you look up positive acts are acts that were passed back when the government was still de jure. And then the non-positive acts are all these enactments that are done by basically a corporation pretending to be the sovereign government composed of we the people. So it says positive acts of trespass, right? So that law is fundamental. So that's the thing, is this contract law that they rope you into through the 14th Amendment. It only exists under common law. And that's that's primarily the solution. That's why I do this. If we can all wake up and realize you're not a United States citizen, you're not. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. And right here, we can see these are boundary stones. Now, even in all the research I'd done, I had never heard of these up until a few days or last week or whenever it was last time I showed you guys. These were placed all around the nation's capital where the United States corporation was meant to be confined to. Okay. Like, I mean, look, I think he's got a map on here. Yeah. Look, these boundary stones all the way around. Boom. To mark the 10 square miles, because they were like, bitch, this is your jail. This is your prison. You monstrous leviathan of a corporation, you are confined to this jail right here, 10 square miles. Because they knew what would happen if this corporation was allowed to get any footing within the states. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but I can see it on my screen clear as day, and you guys can look. Wow, that really makes it good. Okay, I guess I got to do backwards. Okay, so it says jurisdiction of the United States on this side, Maryland on this side. So this is going into Maryland from the jurisdiction of the United States, and this is going into the capital, the seat of the government, and it says jurisdiction of the United States. You're now under this foreign jurisdiction, okay, when you're in there. So this right here is its own country. You are not a citizen of that country unless you were born there. I suppose you could be a citizen of it. I don't know if anybody watches from DC, but as long as you weren't born there, then you're not a citizen of this country. If you were born there, that sucks. No person in their right mind, no sane person in their right mind would agree to stand as surety for the debt of a foreign corporation, and as such, be basically the property that the lender has beneficial use of, right? The liable party in all suits against the United States for pretended offenses, right? Motor Vehicle Code is Internal Revenue Code. Motor Vehicle Code is Internal Revenue Code. Okay, so your property rights were mortgaged. So in case you're new to the show, I show this all the time. This is the most damning piece of congressional record in existence, I would have to say. It says that the money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation. Okay, that's not bad, right? It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. Whoa, wait a minute now. And this is what I mean by you can't learn law without learning finances. There's literally a whole set of laws that go into mortgage, right? When you mortgage something, well, especially if it's you that are mortgaged, you're under an indenture. You are the property. Your property rights are what is held in trust. Therefore, you can only do what you're permitted to do, including drive. And then when you get new property, you have to register it. Regis, like regal, regis. Regis, regal means crown. Register, the etymological root of register is to give to the crown. And you are registering your birth certificate, right? Your child's birth certificate. You're registering these things. You're registering your car. So you're basically giving it to the state to be added to part of the trust estate of the debtor. And then that commercial advertising, that's what your license plate is. It's commercial advertising is placed on the car so that the pirates, known as police officers, have something to create an attachment to when they put you in a state of peril and then come and salvage you as under maritime law. And they can create an attachment to your trust estate through your account numbers, which is ultimately secured by your Social Security investment account, which is why it's actually called Social Security. It is the security. It is the amount of money that they are guaranteed to take from you, right? And that all gets put into a big investment account. And that is the underwriting account for the mortgage. That's why everything is tied to it, because that's how they generate securities. Now, what are securities? We went over this before, but in case you guys don't remember, any evidence of a debt is a debt security. So what we use as currency is debt security, right? Those are debt securities. Tickets are debt securities, just a different type of debt security. Bonds, debt securities, right? Just a different type of debt security. All of these things just represent an IOU, and they're all interchangeable in one way or another. They have to go through the proper channels. But here's the thing. You should now realize how powerful the Securities and Exchange Commission is in this country. And really, with the dollar being a global reserve currency, you should realize how powerful the Securities and Exchange Commission is to every country, right? At least while the dollar remains the global reserve currency, which that's a story I've went over before about why we did that. Because right here, this backed the money domestically, but they still had to pay their debts in gold internationally until Nixon took us off the gold standard. But he had to replace it with something to keep the confidence internationally. The people within the nation, they had made them quite dumb at this point. You know, that is, people have no idea about money. They have no idea about law. They don't, as long as they can buy some shit and take care of their family, they don't care what they're using. They don't understand the implications or the fact that they had been mortgaged. So he took us off the gold standard and made a treaty with the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries to only sell their oil for the U.S. dollar. Well, it's not even a U.S. dollar. It's the Federal Reserve note. It's a misnomer when we call it the American dollar or U.S. dollar. It's not the U.S. dollar. It is a Federal Reserve promissory note. It is a debt note. It's evidence of debt. That's all it is. Trading contracts back and forth. But anyways, that meant everybody whose nation was dependent on oil had to convert their money into Federal Reserve notes in order to purchase oil. And so that made our currency stable for a period of time. Now we see the motive behind every war that has to do with oil. You start selling your oil for gold, or you start selling your oil for another currency that's not our currency, we're coming in and we're overthrowing you. Well, not we, the corrupt corporation that has enslaved our nation is going to come over and remove your leaders and find ones more amenable to our foreign policy, as we call it, right? So, and that'll laugh. But anyway, here's more concrete evidence. So we see Black's Law, 4th edition. I show this all the time. It's also in the 2nd, 3rd edition, every edition except for the ones, I think it's after the 6th edition. It might be the 6th edition that they stopped this. They actually omit things in these legal dictionaries, in these law dictionaries, so that you and a lot of the attorneys who aren't in the know or whatever the case may be, wherever they have that, it keeps you ignorant. You don't have ready access to this information, but right here, you do. So it's the revised 4th edition. It says 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. I have a physical copy of the Black's Law 11th edition. It doesn't say anything about when it became the organic law or how it was. Well, let's read it. It became part of the organic law July 28th, 1868. And its importance entitles it to special mention. It creates, or at least recognizes for the first time, a citizenship of the United States as distinct from that of the states. So it created the 14th Amendment, even Black's Law admitted at this point in time, when this edition came out, that it created a separate class of citizenship, or at least recognized it for the first time. Right? So, and then it goes on to with the usual propaganda. It says forbids the making or enforcement by any state of any law abridging the privileges and immunities of citizens, as long as they don't question the debt, right? Well, now look where those privileges and immunities go, right? You're mortgaged cattle now. You don't have privileges and immunities. You got to pay for every damn thing. You want to hunt? Pay me. You want to fish? Pay me. You want to travel? Pay me. You want to work? Pay me. That's where we live now. All right. Privileges and immunities. My fucking ball sack. Anyway, it secures all persons against any state action. Well, see, now this came in handy for the corporations. So that was put in there. That part of it was put in there for the corporations. We'll actually jump to that real quick. So I mentioned before, United States versus Cruikshank. Oh, we'll get to that one anyway. How corporations became persons. So it says right here in this article, which was how I did my research, and then I looked it up. It says corporations gained personhood through aggressive court maneuvers in an 1886 Supreme Court case. So they didn't waste any time from 1868 to 1886, right? Called Santa Clara County v. Southern Pacific. Now, I've been reading through it, and what I can gather is Santa Clara County was trying to impose something on Southern Pacific. And Southern Pacific countered and said, you can't do that because we have rights as a United States citizen, right? And fortunately for you guys, I spent a little bit of time looking through that today, so we can take a look at it. And what I did, interestingly enough, was I just searched 14th Amendment in this so I could find all the parts relevant to what we're looking for. So the first section says right here, the first section of the 14th Amendment places a limit on all the powers of the state, well, including, among others, that of taxation. See that? Do you understand the implications? That places a limit upon all powers of the state. The states created the federal government. Okay, the federal government doesn't have any powers except for the ones that were ceded to it by the states in the Constitution. I mean, how many times have we heard that? And this judge says the first section of the 14th Amendment places a limit on all the powers of the state. That's insane, right? That is what happened after the Civil War. That is how we were completely taken over by a foreign corporation. That's not possible. You can't corrupt the powers of the state. Well, the problem is the de jure government ceased to exist when the South seceded from the Union. And then this de facto corporate government has since taken its place and just not told anybody openly. So, sorry, I was taking a drink of my energy drink because I need caffeine. So, says after stating that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. So it establishes dual citizenship right there. See, I'm fairly certain when I had that debate with Artie that he tried to tell me, no, it doesn't. No, yes, it does. It would be redundant. If it would be redundant to say that if everybody already operated under that assumption. Oh, I'm a citizen of the United States and the state. Well, see, what's happened now is that you're not even a citizen of the state anymore. You've just been completely transposed over into this United States citizenship, right? So, no, inaccurate. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, let's look at these other gain personhood. I didn't get a chance to read through all these, so we are actually going to check this out together. 14th. All right. So 26 times. Here it says, we shall confine ourselves to the defenses made to the assessment of tax from the alleged conflict of provisions under which they were levied with the requirements of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which declares that no state shall deprive any person of life. You see, you're on you when you're a person, you've attained at parity with a corporation. This is a corporation making this defense. Can't deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That in itself is such a, how you deprive a corporation of life. It is, in essence, by definition, already dead. It is non-living. It has no life, has no corporeal existence. It's an artificial construct of the mind. That's the ridiculousness about the state claiming to be a victim, this corporate state of state, which is in fact not the original state, but is an administrative copy of our original state administering the bankruptcy under UCC. I can actually show you guys that too. That's the Administrative Procedures Act that every single state in the Republic adopted through the 60s and 70s, the Administrative Procedures Act. It's part of the uniform. It's part of being able to enforce the Uniform Commercial Code. They had to come up with UCC because the Federal Reserve Note represents a contract. Okay, it's an IOU. It's secured by the property rights of the American people. That's what the birth certificate is. It's on bond paper because you are in bondage and your property rights have been mortgaged, as I just shown you, in black and white in congressional record. For those of you, see, I've shown it so many times I forgot to cite it. March 9th, 1933, page 83, second paragraph on the left-hand side is it's House congressional record, by the way. If you look in Senate, you're not going to find it because that's a different congressional record. But anyway, you've been mortgaged. And the Federal Reserve Note is the contract that represents that mortgage. And anything purchased, quote unquote purchased, because nothing can actually be purchased with debt, right, has a lien on it. By default, right away, it already has a lien on it. Everything, all property in this country has a lien on it. So anything purchased with a contract evidencing debt already has a lien on it when the person, quote unquote, purchasing it is the surety for the debt. We've been mortgaged to secure the issuance of notes that we then get to slave for and use to think that we own property, but use it for the benefit of essentially the municipal corporations, the Bar Association, and the Crown and the Vatican, ultimately. All right. So anyway, they literally, this is the argument that a corporation is making, says that the Constitution protects us under the 14th Amendment. You can't deprive a corporation of life, liberty. Are you kidding me, dude? Get the fuck out of here. Until the adoption of the 14th Amendment, this kind of, I did read this earlier, there was no restraint to be found in the Constitution of the United States against the exercise of such power by the states, right? So the states, like I said, the corporations were creations of the state under state powers. They were not protected by any constitution like the sovereign people were. They were non-living entities subject to the state, and so the states did what governments do, you know? So this was their way of weaseling out of that. The 14th Amendment says they could not declare war, make treaties of, in many particular, where are we at? Until the adoption of the 14th Amendment, there was no restraint to be found in the Constitution of the United States against the exercise of such power by the states. In many particulars, the states were previously limited. Their sovereignty was restricted one. They could not declare war nor make treaties of peace. They could not enter into compacts with each other. They could not pass a bill of attainder, nor an ex post facto law, nor a law. See, and this is a deception. This is a bar pirate at his finest. Okay, these were the only very few express limitations that were placed on the state, and the ability to wage war did not include defending themselves. Right, there were exceptions to that. This is very, very, very deceptive. And so they're trying to say, well, they already had restrictions. We just added more restrictions, right? Well, no, the whole point of the Constitution was to delineate what the powers and authority of the federal government were. And whatever powers those were, which were these powers listed that were taken away from the states, were given to the federal government by the states, and only those powers. Specifically only those powers. And this bar pirate is trying to use this as a justification for the 14th Amendment, for his ruling in favor of treating a corporation as if it was a one of we the people. And really, simultaneously, what he's doing is actually reducing we the people, if you claim to be a United States citizen, to a corporation. That's what he really did here. Pretty amazing. Pretty underhanded. That's why they wear those satanic black robes and all that stuff. They're masters of deception. I'm not saying all judges are like inherently evil people. I would have to say that all of them are narcissists. You'd have to be a narcissist to be a judge. Like, how could you be a judge and not be a narcissist? Or how, yeah, doesn't make sense. But this guy seems to have definitely been evil. He knew what he was doing. You can tell by the deceptive argument he made there in justifying treating this corporation as if it was a living one of we the people. It's incredible. The first section of the 14th Amendment places a limit on the powers of the state, including, among others, that of taxation. After stating that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside, it declares that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor to deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, as long as you don't question the debt. The amendment was adopted soon after the close of the Civil War, blah, blah, blah. We definitely know about the history of that. But so, interestingly enough, it says that no state. So I know many of you do not understand the implications of this particular part. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, especially after they just tried to claim everybody as a citizen. That was a usurpation of power from the states. There's no other way to look at it. Because remember, the states that were given to the federal government were given to it by the states. I think that's even right here. Whoops. Yeah, so where'd it go? Sorry, guys. But wherever on Alliance here, I'll put it at the top of the page if you guys want to read it. It's the second right here with the but. But wherever an alliance is not corporate but Confederate, the sovereignty resides in each state. That was in the Federalist Papers. Now the state, which starts right here, now the state retained all the powers which she did not expressly surrender to the Union, meaning eventually became the United States Corporation. Or no, it already was. So did not surrender to the Union. A state cannot cease to be sovereign without its own act, nor can sovereignty be asserted but upon a clear title. So wait a minute. how could the United States just all of a sudden say, hey, all of your citizens are now our citizens? Okay, corporate enfranchisements. And you guys can't pass any laws that go against our laws regarding them. Total takeover. 14th Amendment, total takeover. Total takeover. Which brings us, now before the 14th Amendment, bring us to this part. Before the 14th Amendment, they try to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and Andrew Johnson vetoed that shit. And when this is his veto message to Congress, to the Senate, about why he vetoed it, it says, I regret that the bill, which has passed both houses of Congress, entitled an act to protect all persons in the United States and their civil rights and furnish the means of their vindication. See how they already were trying to do that. Which I cannot approve consistently with my sense of duty to the whole people and my obligations to the Constitution of the United States. Now, I don't know a whole hell of a lot about Johnson, but the fact that he vetoed this and the fact that what I'm about to show you vetoed the 14th Amendment, I'd have to say that he was at least honoring his oath to the Constitution. Says, I am therefore constrained to return it to the Senate, the House in which it originated, with my objections to its becoming law. Says, by the first section of the bill, all persons born in the unit. There you go with the person, specifically using the word person. See, this is premeditated by these bar pirates, these international globalists, the same people that are doing what they're doing right now with all this war scare and Ukraine, everything that's going on. It's these same families, these same people that work for these same families are still doing this shit, trying to make the entire world one country that they can then rule through some kind of benevolent dictatorship or possibly outright despotism. Not really sure. It says, any person or all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are declared to be citizens of the United States. This provision, see, that wasn't as outright and blatant as the first line of the 14th Amendment, because this at least says excluding, or it says and not subject to any foreign power. Well, all of the states were foreign powers to the United States, so you could still retain your state citizenship here. And they were just trying to create their own class of citizenship with this, a concrete class of citizenship that they could then take to a bank and be like, we have collateral. That's what they were doing here. Blah, 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 says it does not. So he basically talks about all the people they purported to make citizens. And the main point of it was nothing necessarily against all of these foreigners, that it was just going to make citizens. And remember the time that this was written. It's not exactly politically correct, but the principle is sound. It says it does not purport to declare or confer any other right of citizenship than federal citizenship. It does not purport to give these classes of persons any status as citizens of states, except that which may result from their status as citizens of the United States. The power to confer the right of state citizenship is just as exclusively with the separate states or several states as the power to confer the right of federal citizenship is with Congress. So they were trying to take over. They were trying to include the people within the states. Yeah. So right here, he says, no, you're trying to bypass the state government. You're trying to usurp the power of the state governments, because all governments derive their power. Well, popular governments, I'm sorry, not despotic governments or monarchies, empires, whatever, but popular governments derive their power and authority from the people, who are the sovereign body politic, in whom the power is vested. So when the federal government takes all the states' citizens from them, they are literally robbing them of their political power. And he's like, no, absolutely not. Now, this was a debate had on the floor of the House, 1967. It's June 13th, 1967, Congressional Record House. I got this directly off congress.gov. You can go there, look this up yourself, download it like I did. Page 15, 641. There's literally a discussion on the floor of the House. The 14th Amendment, equal protection law or tool of usurpation. Now, I find it interesting, and it only dawned on me recently when I started looking at all the scumbaggery that was taking place during the 60s. This is primarily when all states converted over to administrative governments under Uniform Commercial Code administering the bankruptcy. No longer any kind of resemblance to the original state government at all. And this all happened quietly. And I'll show you how tricky they were too when they did it. But it would seem that some of these congressmen seen what was happening and realized that it was only being done through the 14th Amendment. So they had this debate. And it says right here, the purported 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is and should be held to be ineffective, valid, null, void, and unconstitutional for the following reasons. The joint resolution proposing said amendment was not submitted to or adopted by a constitutional Congress. Valid point. Article 1, well, you guys didn't know, but they barred the ones who vetoed it, who didn't ratify it, from the ratification process, said that they were in rebellion, even though they weren't in rebellion when they did the 13th Amendment. So they were all a part of ratifying the 13th Amendment, which came before this and was after the war. But when the 14th Amendment came around, they didn't want to ratify this one. They were all in rebellion. Gotta love tyranny. The proposed 14th Amendment was rejected by more than 1/4 of all the states then in the Union, which is the constitutional quorum. And it was never ratified by 3/4 of all the states in the Union, Article 5. The United States Constitution provides, Article 1, Section 3, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state. No state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. The fact that 23 senators had been unlawfully excluded from the U.S. Senate in order to secure a 2/3 vote for the adoption of the joint resolution proposing the 14th Amendment is shown by resolutions of protest adopted by the following state legislatures. The New Jersey legislature, by resolution of March 27th, 1868, protested as follows. The said proposed amendment, not having yet received the assent of 3/4 of the states, which is necessary to make it valid, the natural and constitutional right is undeniable. That it being necessary by the Constitution that every amendment to the same should be proposed by 2/3 of both houses of Congress, the authors of said proposition for the purpose of securing the assent of the requisite majority determined to and did exclude from the said 2 houses 80 representatives from 11 states of the Union, upon the pretense that there were no such states in the Union, but finding that 2/3 of the remainder of the said states or said houses could not be brought to assent to the said proposition, they deliberately formed and carried out the design of mutilating the integrity of the United States Senate, and without any pretext or justification other than the possession of the power without the right and in palpable violation of the Constitution, ejected a member of their own body representing the state, and thus practically denied to New Jersey its equal suffrage in the Senate, and thereby nominally secured the vote of 2/3 of the said houses. So they just said, "Oh, you're not going to ratify it. You're not going to vote for it. All right. Well, you're no longer part of this set. You don't need to be here. Get out of here." You know, this isn't the first time they did this shit. They did this very same thing, and they used the Civil War to do it, to the original 13th Amendment. In fact, a representative in, I think it's New Hampshire. I know I pulled it up. New Hampshire. Where is it at? It's got to be around here somewhere. Bear with me for a second, guys. Get a lot of tabs open. Donover State. No. Nope. Right there. New Hampshire. They did this with the 13th Amendment. Now, both of these, if you remove the 14th Amendment, making the 13th Amendment that abolishes slavery, except in cases of being found guilty of a crime. And then that 13th Amendment combined with the 14th Amendment as it exists now, which was never lawfully ratified, literally standardizes and legalizes slavery, because Congress can call whatever a law. You being subject to Congress now are now subject to being prosecuted for a quote unquote crime. And then when you go to prison or you're on probation or whatever the case may be, you are now a slave. That's what that is. Anyways, if they remove the 14th Amendment and put the 13th Amendment in where it's supposed to be, this would actually be this would be the original 13th Amendment. And the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery would be the 14th Amendment. This is Representative Tremblay. Okay, she was actually a congresswoman, and she introduced a bill called Recognizing the Original 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, this is another one these bar pirates like to say is a conspiracy theory. It is not. It was on the books for decades in this country. Decades. Okay? You could not have a title of nobility, but see, the Bar Association would have never been able to be introduced into this country and take over our court systems and our law if this amendment still stood. This was the biggest wrench in their plans. That's one of the reasons the Civil War happened. And in the post-war confusion and everything, it was, oh yeah, that was never ratified. Anyway, well, there's more states now than there were when it was supposedly ratified, and those states wouldn't vote for it, so it's not ratified. That's not how this shit works. When a new state's introduced into the Union, they understand the Constitution, including its amendments, as it exists then, at that point when they're joining the Union, and they accept that. And they have no say over it because they weren't a part of the Union, the Confederate Union, which we have always been a Confederate Union, when that amendment was originally ratified. So she says, in 1810, a proposed amendment to the United States Constitution which prohibited titles of nobility and which later became known as the original 13th Amendment was introduced, passed both houses of Congress, and was sent to the states for ratification. On December 9th, 1812, shortly after ratification by Virginia, New Hampshire became the 13th state to ratify the amendment. The amendment was therefore ratified by the requisite number of states and had become Article 13 of the United States Constitution. This is a congresswoman. She knows her history. And she's absolutely right. I mean, Virginia's law books had it. It was on the books for decades. And their only excuse is, oh, well, everybody was mistaken. You know, mail was slow and people didn't really communicate back then. It's like, okay, dude, are you serious? All law professionals had, and they weren't bar members, but they had access to the law. But they had to know what the laws were. And in every law book, the Constitution was in there, federal Constitution, and the 13th Amendment, which states this right here. If you have a title of nobility, you cannot be a citizen of any one of the United States. And you definitely cannot hold an office of profit or trust. Okay? Attorneys are called officers of the court. Judges are holding an office. They're elected. Attorneys are officers of the court. A judge will tell you that. Think of how many people in Congress went to law school, have bar cards, stuff like. Dude, you would eliminate most. There was no bar association in this country before 1860. I showed it on my show the other day in the history of the Bar Association of America. It was like 1860 something. There definitely was no American Bar Association until 1878. And both took place after the Civil War and the 14th Amendment and after this 13th Amendment was gone. The founding of the Bar Association, we're talking about an organization that existed in England, the Inns of Court being called to the bar, the barristers. This organization had existed for centuries and centuries, right? Going all the way back to like the 1300s. And there was never one in this country until after the Civil War. Isn't that weird? I wonder why. Oh, it's because this amendment forbade them from holding an office or being a United States. And what they mean by United States citizen here in 1810 is they mean a citizen of one of the United States. Because remember, the United States now is located in the District of Columbia. United States citizen is a corporate person. We have court cases saying you can be a state citizen, not a federal citizen. We got the boundary lines or the boundary stones marking the border of where their jurisdiction is supposed to end and no longer does. We have Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, saying the 14th Amendment is a creation or recognized, created or recognized, at least recognized for the first time, a citizen, a federal citizen, as opposed to a state citizen, essentially. You are not a United States citizen. I am not a United States citizen. No person, well, liberals probably would be. I'm sorry, I was going to say no. So let me revise it. No sane person would willingly be subject to the legislation, arbitrary legislation, of a bunch of madmen and women, rich assholes who are using them like cattle and have their property rights mortgaged as surety for a debt that you're not even allowed to question. Who would do that? Nobody. It's not a conscionable contract. It's not a conscionable contract at all. Right? So that's where therein lies the key to reversing this. Scott, New York City, said this past week it was announced that anyone taking law doesn't need to pass the bar exam to still practice law. It's your natural inherent right to practice law. That's, yeah, like, I mean, they see and right there, they're trying to give people the impression that they're giving them permission, because you have to have permission from authority to do something that's your natural right to practice law, to defend yourself, to study, learn the law, to be a counselor, right? If you so choose. So, and you know, and when the law is written so that everybody can understand it, there isn't any gatekeeping going on, so that the person that's supposedly helping you with the law cannot charge you fucking thousands and thousands of dollars an hour just because they fucking learned a completely different language. That's what laws are written in now. The Constitution is written in a language the common person can understand for a reason. The United States Code is written in a completely foreign language called legalese. They literally list the definitions of the words used before they even write out whatever code it is, because it's a whole other language, and the definition section is the key, and then the words in those definitions, when they're defining another word, also have their own definition. So it's buried within definition after definition after definition that you have to go all the way back to the first original fundamental concept of it to even understand what it is. And the average person, while I actually enjoy doing that, the average person is not ever going to do that. And I don't blame them. I can see to where, you know, it's not for everybody. I find it fascinating. Most people find it fucking like, ow, my head hurts. I don't even want to. And I get that. But they also get that, and that's why it's written in the language it's written in, so that you don't ever know it. If knowledge, or if ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law, then why don't they teach you the law or write it in a language that you can understand? Oh, that's because they don't want you to know it. They want to be able to generate securities by creating attachments to your trust estate when they enter you into the docket, when they dock your vessel at their fucking bank, because it's not a court. I mean, it is. A court is a bank. Bank's a court, court's a bank. Black's Law 4th. Look up the definition of bank. Seat of the judge, right? An association of judges. That's what it is. They call the Federal Reserve Board the Board of Governors, interestingly enough. So anyways, yeah, so blah, blah, blah. It says, during the war between the states, otherwise known as the Civil War, the country was under martial law, and all executive orders remained, and presidents continued to write executive orders. because we've been under martial law since the Civil War. The District of Columbia Act of 1871, otherwise known as the Act of 1871, created a corporation in the District of Columbia called the United States of America. The act revoked prior legislation relative to the district's municipal charter and most egregiously led to the adoption of a fraudulent constitution in which the original 13th Amendment was omitted. And if you actually read the Organic Act, it is to establish a government for the District of Columbia. She's absolutely right. And the United States is located where? In the District of Columbia. It's a whole new, totally different corporation. It's still under the same name, under the same charter. It totally remade it, built it back up, just total, yeah. And it's been a complete usurpation into the authority of the states, the power of the states, sovereignty of the states, and more specifically, the sovereignty of the people. You are not a United States citizen. I am not a United States citizen. Okay? Not unless you choose to be. Not unless you willingly, knowingly, voluntarily contract with them. They have made it impossible not to use contractual nexuses. Now, a nexus, if you don't know, is basically a convergence point, a meeting point, something to tie you. Contractual nexus is where you're tied to them, like your birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, right? All that stuff. People say I'm traveling, right? Here's the technicality of it. Through the Training with the Enemy Act, first of all, now that they have everything's under military territorial jurisdiction of the United States under the 14th Amendment, through martial law, started in the Civil War, expanded under FDR in 33 for the banking crisis and bankruptcy, and then expanded by Nixon and expanded by Bush, and then expanded just recently for what we all know about. We're under military territorial jurisdiction. And under the Trading with the Enemy Act, everybody's required to have a license from the president to engage in commerce. That's what they went from to, you had to have a license to engage in commerce with the enemy of the United States in 1917 to now it's just to engage in commerce within the jurisdiction of the United States. You have to have a license, which means you are an enemy of the United States. And so am I. Everybody, that's how they look at all. We're all enemies of the state because they know if you ever wake up and find out what they've done, right, there's going to be hell to pay. And so to engage in commercial activity, now they've changed the words. This under the 14th Amendment too. They've created a whole new system of law under Uniform Commercial Code. That's what I was saying earlier. The Uniform Commercial Code basically governs the area of presumptive contracts. Okay, so now once they got everybody converted over to this commercial system, the United States citizenship, it took a few decades from the 30s to the 60s. Once they got the majority of people over, they were able to then convert the governments using the Administrative Procedures Act, the Uniform Commercial Code Act, and Judicature Act. Every state adopted a series of acts to convert to the Uniform Commercial Code system. And now they created a whole new system of law using different terms. Like, so people are mad about firearms laws, right? They're like, well, you can't restrict our right to have firearms. Well, yeah, they can, because firearms is a commercial term. So every law to do with firearms has nothing to do with actual arms. You have the right to bear arms. Firearms is a made-up commercial term, just like driving, just like motor vehicle. Right? These are all commercial terms. They have to have commercial definitions to be codified under UCC and applicable to you under contract, because UCC deals with contracts. It's entirely contract law. And it was created because our currency is contracts, because the very nature of our currency is contracts, and there's a lien placed on the property rights of every individual who uses them and calls themselves a United States citizen. Then everything that happens in our quote unquote court system is actually a commercial issue, contractual issue. You're being brought in for a breach of trust indenture. and a violation of contract for anything, even crimes. Even crimes. It's violation of contract. That's why all crimes have a dollar amount attached to them. So, yeah, that's the case. So yeah, anyway, it says today in what appears to the public as the United States Constitution is not a complete document. It was never lawfully amended to remove the 13th Amendment. Instead, the document presented as the United States Constitution is merely a mission statement for the corporation unlawfully established in the Act of 1871, which is the Organic Act. The purpose of this act is to recognize that the original 13th Amendment, which prohibits titles of nobility, is properly included in the United States Constitution and is the law of the land. So she tried. And here's the original 13th Amendment. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall without consent of Congress accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. That's what was on our books. There would be no bar association, and there definitely would be no administrative court. Not at all. So, the last couple things I'm going to show you guys, because I don't plan on being on here. Yes, Jerry Son of Mick says all crimes, some of which people are charged with, boil down to interfering with commerce. Well, even more specifically, Jerry, they're actually breach of contract. They're a breach of trust and a violation of your contract. So whether it be your citizenship contract with the United States through your birth certificate, social security card, or your contract with the state of state through your driver's license, or whatever the case may be, it's a breach of contract. And what these judges are doing is they're bringing you in for a breach of trust, fining you, generating their own commercial paper. Because remember, all of our currency is just debt. So when the court literally uses you as security, the same way that the Congress did with the Federal Reserve, they use you as the surety, use those initial instruments created, the birth certificate and social security card, to use you as security, as surety for more commercial paper. Then they generate this paper in the form of tickets and bonds and probation contracts, parole contracts. They fucking sell you to prisons, whatever the case may be. They sell you to prisons. Guess what? It's all the funds in the prison that your family sends you is called an inmate trust, and they pool it all together, collect interest on all sorts of stuff, right? So it's all just your cattle. Everybody's cattle. That's what livestock. We're livestock. It's basically selling and profiting off of people's labor. That's what they do. That's what they've done for I think since Jesus, since Yeshua was around. He talks about the money changers in the temple. The court is a temple. It's designed like a temple, right? It's very esoteric with the robe, with the gavel, phallic symbol, with the 3-tiered steps, the Watergate, the bar, all that stuff, right? And like I said, the prosecutor is the devil. All right. Unfortunately, nowadays, so is the defense attorney. He's also the devil. They're all the devil now. And yeah, it's a temple, and that's what I was getting at. In Jesus' time, he went in and he flipped over the tables of the money changers in the temple. Well, that's what the courts are doing. They're generating their own currency, because debt is currency. So they're generating their own currency, using you as a security for that debt that they're generating, that commercial paper, and then selling that commercial paper. And that's why each municipality has a bond rating, and you can find this out. There's a court system out here called Novi Courts, well, up in Michigan, not by me, and when you call Novi Courts, literally what it says on their pre-recording is Novi has a AAA bond rating, and it's like part of their pre-recorded. And they're not talking to any of the average people calling it, who they're saying that, whose benefit they're saying that for is the investors. They want you to know that when you buy their paper, being an investor and having permission to, you got to be one of the institutional investors. Not anybody can just be an institutional investor, obviously, or the jig would be up. But they're telling you when you buy their paper that it's guaranteed. They will make sure the obligation of that contract or obligations of that contract is performed. And I bring Novi up because I've known people who've dealt with them that will literally go to the ends of the earth if it was jurisdictionally possible, because you actually can't leave the state for anything but felonies. But anyway, they all over the state, they will hunt you down like you're an axe murderer for a traffic ticket. Not even kidding you. They will hunt you down like you're an axe murderer because they sell those securities and they have a AAA bond rating. They want to keep their AAA bond rating, right? The whole freaking court's run by Arabs. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, so this, let's see. These are, it's the UCC. Did I end up bringing up the Administrative Procedures Act? Act 174. Is this it? No, it's the Uniform Commercial Code. Bear with me. Maybe I didn't. Yeah, I got sidetracked with the UCC. This is something I'm looking into, but I'm going to do more research. That's why it's up. I kind of trailed off into this while I was pulling up pages for tonight's show. And I've often heard, like, basically a presentment. This is regarding presentments. And when you read the way this is written, so I guess since we're here, we'll look at it. Negotiable instruments. Okay. These are transferable. A negotiable instrument is basically a debt security that can be transferred. So a Federal Reserve note is a negotiable instrument. A check is a negotiable instrument. Any evidence of debt that can be transferred to another person as the holder of that debt is a negotiable instrument. And so, let's see, was it here? Negotiation, trust, endorsement of endorser. No, I think I was over here. Like I said, I don't even want to go through this tonight because I need to get it sorted out and more efficiently. But yeah. So here it is. Dishonor of a note is governed by the following rules. If a note is payable on demand, the note is dishonored if presentment is duly made to the maker and the note is not paid on the date of presentment. Tickets are presentments. This whole portion of Uniform Commercial Code governs tickets. So when you get a ticket in the mail, or you get, and this is Michigan's commercial code, but this is actually an exact copy from the Uniform Commercial Code that all states have adopted, and the United States adopted first, the corporation, federal, whatever, and all states adopted this. So it's going to be similar, if not exactly the same in your states. Because this is the Uniform Commercial Code. And the Uniform Commercial Code exists to make sure that if the Treasury or if the Federal Reserve sells any assets, that the Treasury gets paid. It basically governs international commerce, and everything is under this. This is like a subsection of maritime law. It's the portion that governs commerce, currency, banks, liquidation, all these maritime terms, ships. Anyway, supposedly... and there's no guarantee that any method that you try to do other than challenging their jurisdiction and knowing how to argue your point is really going to be effective. Nothing will be effective 100% of the time because we're under foreign military occupation. Knowing how to challenge jurisdiction, present the information I've shown you tonight, and keep from entering into their military maritime tribunal that's created by Congress under Article 1 as an administrative court, will help keep you. If you know how to argue that and present it, you'll stay out of their courts. They don't want to deal with it unless you hurt somebody. Then they're not trying to. They don't give a damn what you say because you actually violated common law too, and they got you dead to rights. So they're going to use you and turn you into surety and generate commercial paper, and they don't give a shit what you know or what you don't if you hurt somebody. But when it comes to stuff like traffic tickets and all that stuff, it's not worth it to them to admit the scam in public in front of people. So 9 times out of 10, they'll either try to negotiate with you or just outright be like, okay, we're going to just dismiss it. But this is another avenue I've read about over the years, and I've actually just come across this in legislation, which is why I don't really bring it up, because until I can tell you exactly how to do it, but you're supposed to be able to refuse the presentment. But you're going to have some kind of legal or lawful basis to refuse the presentment. So I'm going to have to read through this. That would save a lot of time instead of having to go there by special appearance and tell them that you're not part of their kangaroo system, and that you don't have to convey the right of your property to the state to use as collateral for a debt that you don't get to question. It's slavery, involuntary servitude, but if you can just refuse the presentment up front, save a lot of time. So I was going to show you guys Administrative Procedures Act. Let me see. Do I already have it open? Yes, right there. Sorry, guys. I thought, nope. How about that? General provisions. Is it under here? There's one part where there's some very very interesting rule defined, right? This is that double negative legalese wordsmithing. Now let's see if you guys can catch it. You have to think double negative, right? If I say you're not cool or you're not nice, that means you're not cool or not nice, right? Now, if I say you're not cool, that means you're cool, because I'm saying you're not cool. If I say that you're not nice, I'm not saying that you're not nice. I'm saying that you're not nice. It's double negative. You're like, why is he talking? What are you saying? Why are you speaking like this? Sounds stupid, right? Well, this is literally exactly what they did here. So the Administrative Procedures Act in 1969 was when they converted Michigan over to the administration, completely over to the commercial code and the administration of bankruptcy. Common law, gone out the window. This is the final. They had been working on it for a while with the Judicature Act. It's a tough word. Judicature Act, where they outright say we're going to remove common law. I got to find that. I got it on here somewhere. But they finalized it with this Administrative Procedures Act. Interestingly enough, right? So notice that that's 1969. Michigan Court Judges Association, pop right up. So we go here to home. These are not judicial courts. These are administrative courts. They're private corporations. They're actually banks. Look at when this was founded. This is where they sell their commercial paper through, is these judges associations. That's why the judges have associations, sell their commercial paper. What Congress did to back the Federal Reserve note is called a legal mortgage. What this guy does, this bar pirate, a bar card is a letter of marque and reprisal. Like, I don't know, marque, reprisal. Essentially what that is, a letter of marque and reprisal, is permission from one sovereign to pillage and plunder the vessels of an enemy sovereign. They're called privateers. Well, that's what bar members are. They're privateers, and they have permission. Their bar card is permission to pillage and plunder the vessels of an enemy sovereign, i.e. the states or the United States Corporation. That's the debtor. It's the enemy. And the states are enemies of the United States Corporation and most definitely of the bank. So the state of state that exists in all caps is no longer, it's not your de jure Republican state, Confederate state. As I went over, if you guys are just tuning in or have just tuned in, all states are Confederate. Watch the beginning of the show when it's done recording or whatever. All states are Confederate because our union is a confederacy. Well, they're no longer those states. They are now administrative. What's the best way to put this? Administrative corporate departments, I guess, of the banking system. There's no other way to put it. They're like third-party administrators of the bankruptcy between the United States and the Federal Reserve. And so this District Court Judges Association founded the same time in Michigan that the Administrative Procedures Act was passed, 1969. So, rule. So yeah, the double negative, not nice, not cool, means that you're cool, means that you're nice, right? So if you're not nice, then you're not nice. If you're not nice, it doesn't mean you're not nice, right? Confusing. We'll check this out. Rule does not include any of the following: resolution, blah, 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 blah. A rule relating to the use of streets or highways, blah, 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 blah. So right here, G, an intergovernmental, interagency, or intra-agency memorandum, directive, or communication that does not affect the rights of or procedures and practices available to the public. It took me a few times to catch it. And then once I was like, wait a minute, rule does not include, let's just erase all of this like wordy, syllable salad here and just say something, right? We'll just say something, and we'll get rid of all of that, and we'll just go with this sentence right here. So a rule does not include any of the following. We'll say something that does not affect the rights of or procedures and practices available to the public, because they're replacing your court system. So it does not affect your rights or procedures and practices available to the public. That is so deceptive. What that means is rule is something that affects your rights, procedures, and practices available to the public. Rule does not include something that does not affect the rights. Rule does not, that does not. That's a double negative. And right here, they're obliged through their satanic law of karma thing where they have to tell you what they're doing in order to escape karmic retribution. It's right here. You could look it up if you wanted to. So it's not our fault that you're letting us do it to you, right? That's their logic. If I'm selling you, it's like Mark Passio says, if I'm selling you apples and I poison the apples and my sign just says apples and you eat one, die, I murdered you. But if I'm selling poison apples and I got a sign that says poison apples, you buy one, eat it, and die, you killed yourself. And that's literally their logic. It's how they skate that karmic line. So does not, it says a rule does not include something that does not affect the rights of or procedures and practices available to the public, because they change. That's why you have district courts now. So it's talking about procedures and practices available to the public. And this is only to United States citizens. Only United States corporate and franchise citizens can be in these courts, because these are not common law courts for the people. These are corporate commercial courts for the persons. So that's why jurisdiction is the nexus. And that's why I went over this tonight, is because once you know how you are not a United States citizen, and no sane person would enter into that contract is an unconscionable contract, meaning that anybody who looks at that can see that no sane person would enter into that contract knowingly and willingly. And if they do, then they are not of sound mind, which is also, I'm sure that's why they treat us as we are incapacitated minors under the doctrine of parens patriae, because you don't know the law. I mean, it's so degrading. Even the term pleading is made to make you sound like cattle. Are you pleading with the court? Like, meh, right? You're pleading. That's what I hate these people. I hate these people with such a furious passion that I can't even talk about it on the internet. But this right here only applies to corporate United States citizens, 14th Amendment citizens. And all of these courts, that's what I was saying, the rights, procedures, practices available to the public, they're talking about like how under the Constitution, your constitutional rights, you have the unquestioned right to jury. In fact, that is tantamount to freedom and sovereignty as your right to property, as your right to a trial by jury of your fellow sovereigns. Now you can have a bench trial. The judge can sit there and listen to you bleat, right? Plead, bleat, right? Can sit there and listen to you bah the whole time, knowing the whole time that he or she is just going to say, yeah, okay, that sounds good, but guilty. You know why? Because the prosecutor works for the state. The cop works for the state that writes you the ticket, whatever. And the judge works for the state. They all work for the same fucking state. And it's not the de jure Confederate state. It is a corporate administrative state. The Constitution does not apply to a 14th Amendment citizen except the 14th Amendment itself. None of the other amendments or anything in the Constitution apply to a 14th Amendment citizen. The 14th Amendment is a contractual black hole that places you under the arbitrary legislation of Congress, and now through that legislation, the arbitrary rulemaking of private banking institutions. Under the Administrative Procedures Act that every state adopted without fail, every single one. I don't care what state you live in. Look it up now. Just put administrative procedures, whatever your state name is. It's going to come up, and you're going to read it, and it's going to have something just like this under the definition of rule or whatever they call it in your state, right? But here, this applies specifically to the court rules, which is fundamental to your ability to defend yourself or even challenge jurisdiction. The rules of the court. I mean, this is nefarious. This is as nefarious as it gets. You want to talk about slavery, you know? So there was some other things I wanted to go over tonight. I came across this guy's information was pretty good. He's got the entire UCC links to it right here, and he seems to know the UCC pretty well. I was going to go over some of his stuff, but see, that's all starts to get off topic, and that's what I generally do every show, and I need to stop doing in order to keep it just to the point, short enough that people want to watch the whole thing and learn what the hell I'm talking about, and long enough to get the information in it. And I can only do that if I stick to one subject at a time. But let me go ahead and answer some comments and see what people are saying over here. If you're watching this on playback, this pretty much concludes the show. So, I mean, you don't have to watch me answer questions unless you want to. Just letting you know. So let me get rid of that. I'm going to go back a little bit into the comments. Sorry, guys. I'm not dual screened like some of these other podcasters. You're welcome, Phenomenon. I like that. That's a cool name. You're welcome, man. Thank you for watching. Jerry says, as a kid in school, a teacher told us the government borrow money on every child born. So this made sense to me when really saw that what's been done. Yeah. No, yeah. So Jerry, that's what I was saying, man, is the Federal Reserve, the bankruptcy and the conversion from a popular government. Well, it happened in the Civil War, but we're just going to take the 33. That conversion over to a debt-based slavery system under commercial code. We were the United States was the model for the standardization of global slavery through debt. You know, we became the perfect model of slavery through debt. And that's how so through the Bretton Woods Agreement and Nixon standardizing. Now, remember with the quote unquote dollar is a misnomer. It's actually the Federal Reserve note is actually a contract. It's not intrinsically worth anything. And all contracts that represent a debt have to have surety. Well, we are the surety. Now, when that Federal Reserve note became the global reserve currency and all other nations had to convert theirs into that, so it became the base of their currency, our currency did, because it was the new gold, black gold, oil. It's the only way to get oil. It allowed all of these nations to adopt our same model of mortgaging the property rights of their citizenry to secure debts to the private banking institutions. And then those that did not have a central bank, like I said earlier in the show, they had economic hitmen come and get them enslaved to the World Bank. So it's 6 and 1/2 dozen in the other. But yeah, I'm surprised they told you that shit in school. Hey, Julio, good evening. If you're still in here, sorry, I was on a roll. Let's see. Ratify the Constitution sounds sus. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I covered Scott's comment. That's just their way of, you never had to have to pass the bar exam to practice law. In their kangaroo commercial courts, maybe, because they're, but you have the natural lawful right to practice law and defend yourself. And it's just their way, because people are finding out more and more of acting like it's something they're allowing us to do. It's bullshit. But it is interesting. I'm going to look into that because I did not know that. That was something I said. So there's a bunch of, so George, if you're still in here, there's a bunch of contractual nexuses. The key to it is signing one of the keys to it. And again, nothing works 100% of the time, because we are under hostile occupation through a foreign corporation, or of a foreign corporation we're occupied by. And so you can see how the police are militarized. The courts are incentivized not to ever let this information get out or any of that stuff. But understanding the contractual nexuses, signing, since they have made society and life as such that you have no choice in order to exercise your unalienable rights, to enter into these contracts that are still null and void because they were entered into through, that's a form of coercion, by forcing you in order to provide for yourself, your family, to be able to exercise your natural rights. You have to do this. It's called coercion. Coercion. Don't know why I want to throw an H in there. Coercion. It vitiates the contract, but just to show that you know that it's fraud, you sign UCC 1-308, which is the reservation of all rights. Like, I'm not forfeiting any of my rights that I have lawfully by entering into this contract, because I'm forced to enter into it. So, but yes, those passports, if you say you're a United States citizen and you check that box when you're applying for it, or whatever country you are, you're a possession of a corporation. You're a subject, a franchise, all that good stuff. Yeah, we covered the commerce. It's all a violation of contract, which is, it could be considered interfering with commerce. I mean, driving is even a commercial term. It's an interesting way of looking at that. Julio says the first beast that gives power to the second beast, this money system, is the first beast. Well, it's interesting that you say that, since all money are contracts. They're promissory notes with nothing tangible backing them except for trust. In God we trust on our dollars in the United States. But what they really mean is a trust indenture and enforced compliance of the chattel property to perform the obligations of the contract and pay their Social Security and income tax and all that stuff that make all of the notes have some kind of perceived value. It's actually all just based on belief, because it's not tangible. So in fact, that makes money the largest religion in the world. Not Catholicism, not Christianity, not any of them. Money, mammon, is the largest religion in the world, because it is all purely based on belief. 100%. Jerry says, yes, their oath to the bar comes before those that pay them. Well, actually, it's literally in the Corpus Juris Secundum, which is one of their law books. And all these books, because once you realize that mortgage means you're dead, the property that's mortgaged is dead, the judges wear the black robe. This is a law of mortgage. I went over it on other shows and stuff like that. You realize that these law books, like the Corpus, Corpus Juris Secundum, or Black's Law Dictionary, or they're books of necromancy. They're words of power over the dead. But in the Corpus Juris Secundum, this book of necromancy, It says that the bar member, the attorney, is an officer of the court, and his duty is first and foremost to the court, not to the public, and not to his client. It's always to the court. It says it right in there. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, they write laws, and so there's an index, and I forget what it's called, that rates how the readability by the average person of something. I guess the average person can read to like a level 10 on this index, and you guys, I'll look it up and present it in another show. But comparatively, so the average intelligent person can read up to a level 10 on this index, and the United States Code is written at a level 30. It's intentionally indecipherable to the average person, 100%, intentionally. Yeah. Says, we have head of government here jump ship after his St. Patrick's Day trip to the U.S. and 10 others going. They had all been sent notice recently by the people, which they failed to rebut. That is awesome news. I know you guys over there in Ireland have a pretty serious immigrant problem, violent immigrant problem, if I'm not mistaken. So that is great news. I'm Irish by descent. So, I mean, obviously I'm American. I'm from the United States, born in Michigan, but I am definitely, my mom's maiden name's McNeil, and we got a bit of fire in our family from Ireland. I know Irish people don't really take any shit. So I was wondering when that was going to happen, when you guys were going to get sick of them fucking you guys over. Yes, you agree with me about, yeah, it's the karmic. That's why they put stuff in movies, and that's their law of karma, that it's their way of sidestepping karma. And because karma is a fundamental law of nature, just like anything else, day and night, right? Seasons change, motion, law of motion, law of karma. It's in effect whether you recognize it or not, but it's also impartial. It just returns back to what one puts out, and they know this. They know all of these secrets, including astrology. Like, that's why J.P. Morgan said millionaires do not use astrology, billionaires do, and they keep all these secrets for themselves so that they can use it against the people in general, slaving everybody, right? Slave American, yeah. Exactly that. There's no question. So, anyway, let's see. Same ratio. Total 11-11 moment. Right on, man. So, anyways, thank you guys for joining me tonight. My wife works tomorrow, so I have to get up early to watch our child. But thank you guys for joining me. And I hope this was a little bit more coherent and well prepared than the last stream, which was just kind of all over the place with technical difficulties. Stick to the one subject. This contractual nexus is the most important aspect of this entire legal scam to understand, because by understanding how you are not a United States citizen, how it is a foreign corporation, and how no sane person would enter into this contract, you learn how to successfully challenge their jurisdiction. You do not. Who would willingly and voluntarily convey the right of their property to a corporation to use as collateral, and then pay for permission to use said property they just loaned, and then act as the debtor in that situation? I mean, I could see loaning your property as collateral if you're going to get interest on it, which we should be, and that's a whole other story. Uniform disposition on unclaimed property, how they divvy up our interest and derivatives and all that stuff under Uniform Commercial Code, thanks to the good old Uniform Law Commission. But no sane person would give their property over to be used for a debt that they cannot question, and then stand as surety for the debt and represent the United States in all suits against it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Understanding how to express that, and understanding that they are administrative kangaroo courts. They're not de jure judicial courts. Hell, they're not even I mean, they're only legislative courts in the sense that they were created through the powers of Congress, but they're not. They're rogue. They're rogue third party courts of arbitration. That is the word I was trying to think of. They're third party administrative courts of arbitration, and they're basically like the intermediary administering the bankruptcy. And you learn how to, hey, judge, this court is an unregistered casino generating commercial paper without a license. Like, what are you doing? You guys have a license to conduct and engage this commerce? Let me have my W-9, right? So, and the whole thing is, that's something I'll get into. See, I digress again. I got to get off here, guys, and I really appreciate everybody dropping in, and hopefully some of my other subscribers watch this on the playback. It was good to see you, Julio, Jerry, Shockproof, everybody that's still in here at the end listening to me ramble. I'll definitely be on again next Saturday. You guys have an awesome night, okay?